Hello everyone, myself Ayush and welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to take a look after what are objects and how you can create objects in JavaScript. So without wasting any time, let us dive into the video. So what is an object? Object is a fundamental data structure that stores data in the form of key value pairs, where keys are like strings and symbols which store values in the form of data types. It can also include objects, like an object can contain an object which can contain some data and another object. So let's take an example. Let's say I create variable, let's say let name equal to Ayush, and let's say I create another variable which is, let's say, age equal to 14. Now if I ask you, can you store these two entries in a single variable? So the answer is yes, you can, by using objects. Like objects are made for storing values. Now for creating objects also there is some specific syntax. So let's say let obj is an object, and for creating an object you need curly brackets. After that you need key value pairs, like every object is having entries and every entry is made up of two parts. First is key and the second is value. Like you can see, like name is equal to Ayush, age equal to 14. So name is a key and Ayush is the value, age is a key and 14 is the value. So for creating an entry in an object, what you can do is you can write here name, and after writing name you can apply colon and then the value which is stored inside this key. Basically name is a key, so you are going to give the value that you want to store. Let's say name is name colon Ayush, so the name key is going to store the value Ayush. Then for creating successive entries you need comma. So after inserting comma here you can add successive entries, like you can use age as a key, and in the age key, because it's a number so you don't need double quotes, and you can write here 14. So basically object can store any data type with their specific keys, like name is Ayush, age is 14. So this is how you create an object and you can store values inside this. Now what do I mean by storing an object inside an object? So let's take another successive entry, let's say object. Now this, let's say this key is containing an object, real object, like two curly brackets, and now you store another some values, like say name to be Rahul, and let's say age to be 30. So basically you can see, like object is containing name, age as their entries, and another entry is object which is containing further entries like name Rahul and age 30. So this is how you can store an object inside an object. Now let's take a look after some operations that can be performed in an object. What is the main function of an object? Basically to make the data more accessible in a more better way of representation. So how to access the data inside this object? Let's say I want to access Ayush. So how can I access Ayush? For that purpose you need to write here object, like the name of the variable obj dot. Now whatever you want to access inside this entry, you need to specify the key. So let's say I want to access Ayush, but Ayush is in the key name, so I will write here name. So this obj.name is going to return Ayush. So let's print it to check is it coming or not. So let's say console.log obj.name. Now if I run this, you can see it returns Ayush. Now let's see if I want to check for age, like what I can do is, like let's paste it here and let's say obj.age. Now if I write here obj.age, it's going to return the value 14, because you know what, 14 is inside the key age inside the object. So obj.age is going to return 14. So if I run this, you can see Ayush. Let's save this, and now you can see Ayush and 14 is there. Now let's see if I want to access the values inside this object, which is an entry in obj. So for that purpose let's copy and paste it again. Obj dot, now first for let's say I want to access this age 30. For that purpose first I need to access the entry object. For that I need to specify the key object. So let's say obj dot object dot. Now inside this object also I want to access one of these two values. So let's say I want to access this age. So you need to write here obj.object.age. It's going to return 30, because you know what, inside this obj there is object, and inside this object there is age which is 30. So if I save this and run this again, you can see Ayush, 14 and 30 is the result. Now in JavaScript there is an object, universal object, that is containing some functions that you can use to do some additional functions on an object that you've created in your program. So that is object with the O capital, and when you write it like that, it is containing some functions. So let's say object dot. Now you can see a bunch of functions are there, but I'm going to discuss about some of the most important ones here. So let's say object. Now there is a very important property which is has own. So let's say you got an object like a store, some values and some data from another source by using an API or whatever, but you don't know the actual object because it's not there in your program. You got it from an API, so you want to access the data inside that object. For that purpose, you will use this object, let's say the capital O1, and use its function to do some additional operation on that data because you don't know what's the data, right? So let's create an object. Let's say let obj equal to, and let's say this time it contains the data of an employee. So let's say emp name is Rahul, and let's say emp underscore salary is, let's say 10,000. okay, so emp name is Rahul and emp salary is 10,000. Now this object is containing two entries. Now I want to check, is the emp name present or is the emp salary present? Like I don't want to check the value, but I want to check is the keys there in the object or not. So let's say I don't know the data, but I want to check is the particular keys there in the data so I can access them. So for that purpose, what you can do is you can say, let's say console.log, I want to check it, right? So console.log, and now I will say Object.hasOwn. Now hasOwn is going to check is a specific object containing some specific property. So the first parameter is obviously the object that I want to check in. So I will pass here the obj here, and after that I will pass the property that I want to check. So let's say I want to check for employer name, like emp name. So I'll write here emp name in double quotes because it's a string. So you can see hasOwn, first you pass the object and then the emp name as the second property, like the property that you want to check for. Now this entire function is going to return either true or false, a boolean value, like is it containing. If yes, it's going to return true. If not, it's going to return false, and that's I'm going to print. So let's save this and let's print it. So you can see the result is true. It's containing emp name. Now if I say emp age, which is not there in this object, so if I run this again, you can see false is there. Another important function of the object is that you can use Object.keys to access all the keys inside an object. So let's say console.log, because I want to print whatever I get. So object dot, now in this object we are having a function known as keys. So basically when you write Object.keys, it takes on an object as a parameter and it's going to return all the keys inside that object. So let's pass the obj as an object. Now this function is going to return all the keys inside this obj object. So if I save this and let's say if I run this, you can see it has returned an array. What is an array? I'm going to discuss it later on, but for now there is an array which is containing two values. First is emp name, which is the employee name, and the second is the employee salary. So basically these are the two keys and it has returned both of them in the form of an array. So this is the reason why we use Object.keys. And one more important thing, that you can use Object.entries is also a function there, like Object.entries. Let's clear the console for an instance. Now Object.entries, basically if you want to access each and everything inside an object, like you got a data from an API, right? You don't know what's there inside the data, but you want to access each and everything inside the data regarding the keys, the respective values. So for that purpose you can use Object.entries to know whatever is there inside the data. So you can either print that data as well. Let's say console.log object, so you are going to get the object inside your terminal. So let's say if I run this, it's going to return first. Okay, you need to see that first it has returned the entire object, employee name, emp name Rahul, emp salary 10,000. So it's basically the raw object that I have created. The second is the entries, like the Object.entries obj. That function has returned this data. It's basically an array which is containing two indexes. First is the emp name and Rahul, means it's containing, the first array is containing the first entry, the key of that entry, as well as the value of that entry. The second is containing the key of the second entry plus the value of the second entry, like the emp salary 10,000. So it's like almost the same thing. So you can either print it or you can get that in this form using entries. Now why to use entries? Basically it makes it more more accessible than this. Like you write here like obj.emp name, but when we access arrays that I'm going to tell you later on, in that way what we do is we basically access the values inside an array using numbers like 0, 1, using the indexes. But in object you cannot use indexes. You need to write like obj.emp name, obj.emp salary, so in that form. So yeah, that's all for today's video. Meet in the next video. Till then, see you.